Bring your houses, we walk down to flush them out. We don't play it with the
Welcome to the Hearts of Men podcast, a journey into the depths of men's hearts where courage meets vulnerability and wisdom embraces integrity. In a world that often measures a man by his outer achievements, this podcast dares to explore what truly defines a man of character. We unpack the challenges and triumphs that shape men's lives, bringing to light stories of resilience, compassion, and unshakable faith. We believe that the heart of a man is a treasure trove of untold stories, powerful lessons, and profound wisdom. Through authentic dialogues and insightful discussions, we aim to unlock these treasures, one story at a time. So, whether you're seeking guidance, inspiration, or simply a moment of reflection, you're in the right place. Get ready to be challenged, inspired, and transformed. And now, to guide you through this journey of discovery, please welcome your host, a visionary leader and a true catalyst for change, Dwayne Dwyer, but we affectionately know him as the Mindset Coach.
Good evening and welcome to this week's episode of the Hearts of Men podcast. We're your host for this evening's conversation. My name is Dwayne Dwyer. I go by the Mindset Coach, and I am affectionately joined by my brothers, Mr. Roland Walker himself, also known as Poor Man's Dr. Phil, or Mr. Shift Happens. Below him, we have our other brother, Mr. Tawami Gaddy, the son of Timothy, but affectionately known as the Available Man. And right below me, I have my brother, Mr. Garfield Martin, also known as the Uncle Junior himself, otherwise known on Tuesday nights as the Consistency Coach. Gentlemen, how are you doing on this beautiful Friday evening?
Doing well, man. Doing well. First week back at work at a whole new job at the high school from elementary. So been some adjusting, but so far so good.
Good.
I'm doing all right. I was looking forward to this weekend so I wouldn't have. Last week I was on the road. Previous week I was on the road. Now I can just coast. Show up tomorrow at 10:30 Eastern on Coach's Camp.
That's what I'm talking about.
Hey, I'm doing good. You know, I'm here with my brothers, and got a week of leave that I get to burn because I got some use or lose hours. So you know, it's gonna be a good week coming up.
You know what? I need to burn some leave myself, dog, on it. As you know, like Roland said, man, and like you guys always know, it's always good to be able to share in conversation with you guys every Friday evening, but not just you. It is also an honor to be able to share in conversation with the livest chat on social media. So that being said, over on this network, we like to refer to everybody by name. So listen, if you haven't yet, get into the chat, say hello, say something so that we can acknowledge you because we want to give you your flowers now. So that being said, Michelle Ray, good to see you. Nick D, welcome to the show. Lisa Keys, good to see you as always. What up, B? Good to see you. Man, let me tell you something, man. I'm gonna put it out there, and B, you probably gonna talk with me later. You know how you shotgun, you know how you mean you say shotgun a weapon, right? Man, she told me something the other day to shotgun me, bro. It broke me down. I shed a tear or two when I got off the phone. I'm just putting it out there. But again, I can't tell you how much that meant to me. So thank you again. Let's see who else has joined us this evening. Let me see. N. Ellis, good to see you and welcome to the show. Sandra, good to see you. What up, sis? Adrian Walthour, good to see you. Miss K Robinson, I'm gonna mess that up. K, good to see you. Miss Verlene McCoy, good to see you and welcome to the show. And listen, like I said before, if you are out there in whatever platform, whether you're on Facebook, Instagram, whether you're on X, whether you're on LinkedIn, it doesn't really matter. Just give us a shout out. We're monitoring all of those at the same time. Because again, like I said, we are honored that you are here with us because you can be anyplace else, but we appreciate you being here. Before we get started, real quick admin notes. I want to put it out there tomorrow morning, like Roland said. We have our first annual community meeting that is for everybody. It does not matter what your status is. It is for everybody. So the goal is for all of the panel members, whether you're looking at Friday nights, whether you're looking at Saturday or Tuesday. I would like all of the panel members up top. That way we open the floor up and we can talk to everybody. So we're going to have an open mic. That way you guys can ask questions, share insights, and what you'll like to see happening moving forward on this network. I think that's all I got as far as admin notes. You guys got anything we need to put up before we get started? No? Good to go? All right, let's get it started then. Welcome everyone to another powerful episode of The Hearts of Men. Today we're diving deep into a topic that hits close to home for many: why modern day relationships are doomed. In a world where relationships seem fragile, more fragile than ever, where the idea of commitment often takes a back seat to personal fulfillment, and where the influences of media shape our expectation in ways we might not even realize, it's crucial that we take a step back and examine why so many modern relationships are struggling to survive. We'll explore the erosion of commitment and the sacred covenant of marriage, the rise of individualism that places itself above partnership, and the unrealistic expectations that feed us through social media and often sets us up for disappointment. We'll also look at how the decline in emotional intelligence and meaningful communication contributes to the breakdown of relationships. And finally, we'll discuss the spiritual disconnection and lack of purpose that leave many relationships feeling empty and directionless. This conversation isn't just about pointing out the challenges, it's about understanding them on a deeper level so that we can find ways to build stronger, more resilient relationships. So whether you're single, dating, married, or somewhere in between, this discussion will offer insights that can help you navigate the complexities of modern love and partnership. So that being said, let's get it started. So, gentlemen, I want to put it out there. Lisa Keys, if I missed you, I do apologize. Welcome to the show. I appreciate the flowers, B. I want to put this out there as we get it started, because this is definitely one of those conversations, right? This is the Empowering Perspective community. That being said, everybody's perspective is welcome. Everybody's thoughts and concerns are welcomed as well. And as always, please ask questions. You guys should know by now I'll derail a whole show to make sure that we answer your questions. So first and foremost, in a conversation of this magnitude, we like to define things where we're from, right? So gentlemen, I want to throw this first question at you and drop it in your lap. How would you describe modern day relationships, or simply from your perspective, relationships as you see them today?
Partially kind of as the title describes, doomed. And I know you're gonna say more, so I'm gonna say a little bit more and I'm gonna sit down. But it's because I think we come to almost every type of relationship in today's world with a selfish mindset. What can I get from the relationship? What can I expect from the relationship? How do you benefit me? And nobody ever looked in the mirror and said, what do I bring to this relationship? I dare not say table, because somebody start flipping tables when they hear that word. But but what do I bring to the relationship that benefits the relationship and possibly the other person on the other side of the relationship? So that's my take. That's how I see it.
So just to make sure I'm understanding you, what you're saying and what I hear you say is that from your perspective, most people come into relationship expecting to extract from the relationship itself, whether it's the partner or the relationship in its entirety, as opposed to looking at how they can actually serve their partner or relationship.
Absolutely, sir.
Okay. Thank you for that.
How would I describe them? I describe them as disconnected and confused. I think there's a lot of disconnection, kind of like what Gary was saying, on both parts as to who's supposed to do what in the relationship. So I think there's a disconnect between what people want, what they can actually get, and I think there's a disconnect in what they think other people's responsibilities are. I think there's confusion in all of that because you see social media says something. You know, if you were raised by a single mother, you may have a certain perspective. If you were raised in a two-parent home where both parents were actively involved, you may have a certain perspective about it. So, and I think all of that creates a certain level of confusion because most people are not going to go to the source or a source and kind of figure out what it takes to make a great relationship. So, are there great relationships out there in modern day? Absolutely. But if we were just to talk about them, not we wouldn't have a show. But if they're already good, they're already good. If it ain't broke, so I think there's some disconnection, there's confusion, and I think at some point there needs to be a certain level of understanding to help eliminate some of that disconnection and some of that confusion.
So I like the fact before you get started, Roland. I like the fact that you address the other side because I think too many times what we want to do is we want to look at and I hate to say it this way, like the onesies and twosies that we know in our own personal footprint that actually have good relationships based upon our perception of what good is. But that's not what we're talking about. You know, if they figured out how to make it work, if they dealt with their own version of coping mechanisms, whatever the case may be, we're not talking about them. We're talking about the mass confusion that everybody's seeing right now. So thank you for saying that.
Let's see. When I was growing up, we would go to the stores, and some of the stores would have vending machines. And sometimes when you push D1 for a Snickers, the Snickers wouldn't come down, or it would get stuck. And then you would push trying to get some Doritos, and you would get a payday. And then the machine actually works, but it's just not working properly. So they would come out there, unplug it, and put a sign on it saying out of order. So I think today's relationships are out of order. So they out of order because they aren't working properly. You can be content within something and try to make it work. Supposedly, you're just biding time. But when you aren't aligned properly, whereas everybody want to be equal. And in reality, we aren't equal. We're equal in maybe what we have responsibility to do, but responsibility for, we aren't equal. And nobody wants to get in position to do their portion. So when it comes to relationships, everybody wants to do or knows better what to do of somebody else's position other than themselves.
Very interesting. I do like that. I like the out of order. You kind of went away. I was thinking you was going to go one way and you came around the other side. I still like it. Don't get me wrong. So let me kind of let's continue to dig into this because I think we need to kind of like baseline our understanding of the difference because you look at modern day relationships versus traditional relationships, right? So if you could like describe what is the difference between the two, what would that be?
I'll start with traditional, and these are my opinions. Traditional is more so look at old school, you look at where the man may be the provider or the majority provider in the home, the wife or the spouse may not work as much or very little or not at all. Her responsibilities and roles may include things like taking care of the house, cooking and cleaning, rearing of the kids, football practice, soccer practice, different things like this. His responsibilities may be paying bills, maybe working, doing all the work outside in the yard, etc. When her car needs gas, he may go get gas. He's responsible for washing the car, different things like that, where the roles are kind of defined between what he's going to do and what she's going to do, as we relate to, some of the things in the past, old traditions. And I think a modern, it comes in a bunch of different forms that are not like that, right? So you have, on one hand, you may have the 50-50, you may have the poly relationships, you may have LGBTQ relationships. So I think that the modern are, in a sense, anything that is not like that traditional type relationships, and they come in so many different shapes and sizes. But I think that you guys will probably narrow some of them down. So I'm gonna stop right here and let you guys work on it.
I'll say with modern relationships are, the roles are gender neutral. There's really not a head to the family structure. It's okay, we make it as we go. You in charge, I'm in charge. It don't matter. Somebody got to be in charge. And when you don't have one head, or you have more than one head, that's called a freak in science. And modern relationships, you make up your own standards. You whether you take it from society, you take it from TV, you take it from the neighbor around the corner, whatever you deem right, you take it and add it to your relationship to make your relationship work, supposedly.
I thought he was singing Rick James for a second. But the difference to me is kind of what everybody alluded to, and Roland said in his first statement, which is order. We don't have an order to things. As a society, we don't have an order to things, right? What we call freedom is, it's the freedom. Try not to flip this conversation, but what we call freedom is the freedom to sin, the freedom to be hellish, the freedom to not have morals and values anymore. That's what we call freedom. When we talk about freedom, we're talking about men wanting to be women, and we're talking about women wanting to be naked and wanting to be like, and wanting to be more man. Like these are what we call freedom, and the freedoms that we're fighting for is actually the lack of order in our whole society, and it exists mostly in part in our relationships. All right, there are people out there that would prefer not being in a relationship so that there's no order to their life. A lot of people are destroying relationships because in order for relationships to be lasting, there has to be order. It's impossible. I don't care what the relationship is, but it's impossible for me and you, right? You don't even got to talk about a romantic relationship, but for me and any one of these brothers to exist in the same space without there being a set of boundaries or orders on how things are going to move and operate. Because something productive has to happen in order for us to maintain in this space together. And so when we're talking about relationships, especially when people are talking about spending their lives with a whole nother human being that has a whole nother brain, whole nother set of emotion, a whole nother set of values, a whole nother set of ambitions, and the only ambitions and values and emotions that matters is yours, there's no way that we can exist. So my answer is order.
I do like those responses, and I don't disagree with none of them. I like how you kind of talked about the different types of relationships and what they look like, and the different ways we can view relationships in this modern day age. And it shouldn't surprise anybody based upon what you see, right? Roland, you did start with the order piece, and I really thought you was going to go continue down that road, and you did, right? But the way I would sum up what you said is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, traditional relationships have principles that guide them. And without those principles, what you have is like zero guidance whatsoever. So it does what it does. It is what it is. And, we've tried to find a happy medium in between. And those principles lead into what Gaddy said, right? When you have guardrails, then there is freedom within those guardrails. And I think a lot of times what we perceive freedom to be is anything but freedom. Like, let's think about it. The reason why, and you guys know it, every one of you know this right here. The reason why the United States military exists is so it can preserve democracy. So with under the idea of the of the notion that there is a hammer that can actually be used and freedom can be expressed and enjoyed and so forth and so on. But make no mistake about it, the freedom that is actually exercised day to day is preserved based upon that hammer that the United States has in its back pocket. So the ability to engage in war and the threat of actually winning is the reason why the freedom exists within the United States. When we change gears and look at relationships, now you're looking at there are no limits, there are no boundaries, there are no principles that guide the way that two people are to exist in that relationship. And because the principles are, and I hate to use this term, but I'm using it anyway, the principles are more wishy-washy, going back to what Gaddy was saying. Like, if my emotions are the most important thing, then I get to make it up as I go along. Because again, like we talked about on Tuesday night, emotions exist in three different parts. You have the subjective perspective of reality, then you also have the physiological expression, and then you have the behavioral expression. But if it begins with the subjective perspective of reality, that means I get to make it up. And as long as I can make it up, you can't tell me how I feel is wrong. But yet we're confused as laws are changing constantly over and over. They're taking away this, they're doing this, and they're doing this, so forth and so on, simply because we are existing in a space where we have limitless relationship. I think one of the things that Garfield mentioned was like polyamory, right? So it is okay to have multiple people in a relationship. It is okay to not have an identity in a relationship. I can't remember what that's called, pan or whatever that looks like. And the more guardrails you take off, the more relationships just seem to open up. And because of the lack of principles that do not govern the way that I behave in relationship, now what you have is a situationship that most people claim that they want, but it really does not evolve to anything meaningful because it focuses on me. And that's one of the biggest difference that I see. The traditional relationship is focuses on the collective group. So you got husband and wife and children, and they focus on the entirety of the entire group, to where in most cases now what you're seeing is that I just want to be happy. I just want, you know what I'm saying? What about me? What do I get out of this? You know, so forth and so on. So now that's one of the big issues. Traditional relationships tend to focus on the lifelong commitment, to where divorce is like the last option, to where, you know, modern day relationships, hey, it's an option. It's always on the table. So that's one of the things that those to me are one of the biggest difference. You know, Uncle, you look like you was about to say something, bro.
I was, but I think I'm gonna wait
Okay.
later on.
Okay.
I won't wait. I'm gonna jump in right here because you threw something out there. You said traditional relationships. The structure of a traditional relationship was the husband, the wife, and the children were focused after those two. And now it's the husband focusing on the kids, the wife focusing on the kids, where those two parties that came together in matrimony no longer focus on one another because they're focusing on all these other little pieces. So then they grow apart. And when they grow apart, there's no more marriage. So it's two people living together, trying to figure out how long these kids gonna be in the house so we can get divorced.
And even so, I think it's just slightly different, and this is just my opinion. I think it's the men being taught to, and I choose words wisely because what I'm saying is all of us. I don't think any of us were taught right, but men are taught to pander after the woman, right? Or we say spoil the woman, right? And the women are taught to focus on the children and the career. But nobody is so. That's how I'm looking at it. Like, I don't even see that the men are even focused on the children. I think the men are chasing the woman, and a lot of us were raised believing that we can create happiness for that woman, and so we start chasing that. Oh, let me run behind her. Let me ooh baby. Let me flowers. Let me instead of the focus being on the family, right? And so now, and then you have the wife focused on the children, but nobody is focused on the relationship, the family structure as a whole. So I agree with you, but that's how I see that it breaks. But
Do me a favor, y'all keep talking. I'm getting a request to send the link to some other places. So keep talking, keep it going for a second. I'll be right back.
Here's what I wanted to talk about. Coach had mentioned something about principles, and I think people do have principles. I think what happens is people come into the relationship with a different set of principles, and then they are. I'm giving off my principles. I'm trying to put down my principles. She's trying to put down her principles, but our principles may not be aligned, or they may not be or have been communicated well with the other party. So I think it's more so that I think that, and because these things are not communicated well, it causes that disconnection, and it causes it can come sometimes cause people with bad principles to get together because they haven't talked about them and haven't been intentional about the relationship in the beginning. You know, like I said, people come in with certain principles. I think that everybody has principles, but I think that they may be different a lot of times, especially when they're not communicated well between the two parties.
See, I think what we tend to deem as principles a lot of times are compatibility tests. We try to see where we like a person. We don't see when you get into a relationship, try to see where we're compatible. That's an issue already because all you're looking for are the good pieces. And you're going to take all the good. Then when you find out who they really are, then like, oh, you wasn't like this in the beginning. Yes, they were. You overlooked it because they were giving you what you asked for. So if the only thing, well, do they like this? Libras are compatible with Aries and all this other crazy mess. We start off with things like this. I want them 6 feet for dark and wavy hair and all this, and he might be bald head, but you are looking for the outward thing instead of saying, how is this man's character? How is this woman's character? Is this person someone I would want to rear my children, not somebody that look good in a bikini? See, we look for those things and call those things priorities and things that we see, okay, we're compatible. When I'm walking down the street, does she look good on my arm? Like, what it matter if she's trash on the inside?
I think you can get both.
Absolutely.
But, I was joking. But back to the principle thing, I think the problem is when your principles don't have a base. There's nothing that is leaning. There's no foundation that it leans on. It's a principle based upon what I want. My principles is like you watch, and sometimes they're good highlights. So I watch some of the highlights, yes. But you listen to some of them balloon popping excuses, right? Yeah, a lot of them are 6. Oh, he's not 6 feet. I want him taller. How much your business made? Like, mind your business, first of all. But it's based off of that. Oh, well, I need a man that makes this much money. Why? Because I see my life living like this. Well, then can you fund it? All right, then why are you expecting him to provide it? Right? And it's not that he's not a provider, but you want him to provide something that you have never seen provided in your life for you. Well, whole nother conversation. But the principle is not based on anything tangible. And so most time I think when people talk about principles and morals, we're talking about where is the foundation that it comes from. What is it? It can't be based upon she got to look like this. He got to be this tall, or he got to make this much money, or she has to have enough education to make my businesses better. Or maybe we can find someone that shares similar beliefs. Because at the end of the day, it's a journey, and I don't think anybody gets married at 20 and that marriage is the same at 30, 40, 50. Like, both of y'all are different. There's a journey that we travel, but do we believe the same thing?
Well, so when I made mention about principles, I think Roland kind of hit it But when I talk about principles, I'm talking about principles that govern the relationship. That's the key I'm talking about. Not necessarily your individual principles or my individual principles, and then we try to bring them together, and then we take our principles and sword fight like we part of Star Wars, right? No, it's the principles that govern the relationship, the principles that govern two people existing in a thing and figuring out a way to live harmoniously to where the principles become the judge. Not the way I feel about it, not the way you feel about it, not the way Big Mama taught you, not the way Big Daddy taught me, like none of those things, right? The principle becomes the judge of righteous of behavior within the scope of relationship. That's the key that I'm talking about. And what I'm seeing, and this is just from my perspective, what I'm seeing is that those principles do not exist. It's made up as they go along.
I agree, because in the scripture, when punishment was dealt out with Adam and Eve, when it came to Adam, he said, and I'm gonna paraphrase this, he said, because you have listened to the voice of your wife, meaning that I told you to do something, I set the instructions, I give the principles, but you listen to what she said. That's exactly where we are. We're listening to everybody else and failing to listen to his voice, his word, his guidance. So when you don't do that, punishment has to come down.
Yeah, and I don't think this is a thing about gender roles. I don't want to mistake that. It's not so much as what a man is supposed to do versus what a woman is supposed to do, because at the end of the day, sure, years ago it was that the husband was the breadwinner and the wife stayed at home and raised the kids and take care of the house, whatever the case may be. Now things have changed to where both people are working now. So at the end of the day, you have to figure out what shared responsibilities within that household look like. I've said it before, and I meant it 100%. Like if I was to get married again, if I ever catch her with a lawnmower, I'm gonna run over with my truck. Ain't nobody cutting no grass in my house but me or the person that I pay to cut the grass. That's just what it is. Now that's my perspective. If that's a showstopper, then don't even come to my door. It's just that simple. But and I say that jokingly, but not jokingly. I'm serious when I say it, because those are just things that I believe. You don't have to cut grass. You ain't got to worry about taking, trash out, things of that nature. However, there are some households to where that is acceptable. He'll be in there watching TV and she out there sweating with the lawnmower, whatever the case may be. Whatever works in your house for you, I'm 2 thumbs up. But that's not a principle thing, right? That's a personal preference thing, in my opinion. So I don't want people to confuse this conversation as though we're talking about and dissecting and differentiating between gender roles. Like case in point, I think I seen somebody says, well, women working now. So, I mean, I appreciate that. Great. Everybody works. That doesn't make us special. No one is special just because you have a job. If anything, that means you're in bondage, but that's a whole nother conversation. So just highlighting the fact that we both work means absolutely nothing as it pertains to the relationship, because jobs take us away from our relationship. If you think about it, I'll be completely transparent. Being in the Army for 24 years, I missed a lot when it came down to my kids. But unfortunately, I had that MOS to where I was the only person at my pay grade in my squadron. So there was a lot of things that came down, and Roland can tell you because he's seen it himself. There was a lot of things that came down. I was the only person who could do it. So when you were calling me and say, hey, are you coming to the school to eat lunch with the kids? No, because I got to work. But again, when you're raised under that and thinking that men are providers and protectors, and that's all, then that's what we end up doing. So again, just want to make sure that we understand it's a difference that we're talking about. We're not talking gender roles, because gender roles is a thing. I'm not talking about job, because at the end of the day, if we base our relationship on jobs or how much money we make, we're already lost. So whoever believes that, we need to stop with the conversation. If we are believing that relationship is based upon the amount of money that one person makes, then we are really further behind than what I thought. Okay, then I got quiet on me. All right, listen, regardless of wherever you are, whatever platform you're on, make sure that you hit the like button. And again, share it. Hit the like, whether you're on whether you're on Facebook, LinkedIn, whether you're on YouTube, it doesn't really matter. Hit the like button and share it. So let's kind of get after some of these questions in the chats. Why are men and women today not synced? Is it because they are not compatible or because they are different in their thinking of what relationship really is? Yes. Go ahead, gentlemen.
I think if I had to choose just between the two, I think it'd be more of their difference in thinking of what a relationship really is. I think there are a lot of people who out there are compatible, but I think that their sense of what a relationship looks like is kind of warped, and I think that's what the problem is. If we're just looking at these two examples.
I don't know. For me, these two examples are the same thing to me. I think if we don't have the same ideology or idea of what a relationship is or what it looks like, then we are not compatible. So I think it's yes and because that's how I view it. So I think because we're both, it's literally we're both being, and I hate to say, I say this every time we have these conversations, we're both being raised to go this way, and we're trying to meet and pull each other apart and wonder why there's so much tension 2-3 years in because we're pulling against each other. We're not pulling in the same direction. So for me, that's what
I think it's warped because we have expectations that we haven't seen lived out in actual people. We heard people talk about it. Oh, you're supposed to do this, and he's supposed to do. She should be doing this. Like, it may have worked in your house like that. That doesn't mean it's going to work in my house like that. We taking advice from everybody and anybody, yet we aren't necessarily putting the work in to do what we need to do in our households because we have expectation. Well, when I come home, she's supposed to do this. I'm supposed to get the big piece of chicken. Like, that may have worked in the 1940s and 50s, but that may not work in your household. So stop trying to put that on your house and you stop taking your direction from other people and then expecting it to work in yours.
I like
I
that.
can I.
Yep, go ahead.
And it's not a negative response, but here's the problem though, Rose. The problem is it's not that that's a bad or a good thing, right? The problem is Mama taught me that down there in Mississippi, but I went and found me a city girl and expect country values from that city girl. She excited me. I liked her. She was pretty. The way she wore that dress or whatever the case may be. Now I want her to show up in my house and act like the country woman back there that live down in not just because the city's in the South, but down in the country. And I'm not saying that's the only place you're gonna find women who gonna give you the biggest piece of chicken. All right, I've heard that a lot in the in the North and in the South. But the problem is we're looking for people that have our mama's value, but they don't behave like our mama. You in the club looking for missionary such and such. Like, what are we doing? And so that when I hear these things being pushed out and everybody's demonized everybody's desire, or I should have this, or you make my plate first. Well, that may have worked where you're from. Then maybe you should have married a girl from where you're from.
I'm gonna ask a question to go along with this question because I'm with you to where when we look at these two alternatives, compatibility and different ways of thinking are the same thing. But who taught you guys how to be married? Who taught you guys how to select a wife? Who taught you guys how to be in a relationship? Just being transparent, because I wasn't. I was never taught that.
I was never taught that.
You taught that? What about you, Garfield? Okay. Now, I'm not talking about seeing mom and dad in the house if you was that fortunate. I'm not talking about seeing them behave. I'm talking about them sitting, son, sit down. Let me tell you how to do this. Daughter, sit down. That's the answer. Why are they not synced today? Because there is no codified training on how to be a husband or how to be a wife. Now, we know where it's at, but I don't know of anybody who taught that within the household. And because that's not something that is taught, what ends up happening is that we see things and that thing is either liked or it's either disliked. And if it's disliked, I don't want nothing to do with that. If it's liked, I want everything to do with that. So in essence, we go into a relationship chasing the feelings of like and happy, and not necessarily understanding the principle that govern the things that will make you happy and that will make, present environments that you like. So I think the answer to that is home training. I'm just being transparent.
Can you and Roland clarify something for me? Because on one hand, it sounded like you saying that you're talking about that people need to be taught from the previous generation or from maybe their parents or a relationship. They need to pass that information down. And then it seems like, in a sense, Roland was saying that, people are saying, hey, do this, do this, do this, but hey, we don't do it like that anymore. So which one is it?
See, I think with your household, if you try to run your household like your parents did, your parents were flawed. So they made it work and made it fit however they made it fit. And it may have worked for them, but you didn't marry your mom. See,
so then so from coach's perspective, so how did that information get down then?
you
Coach
teach,
was saying
as you learn
need to be
and do
taught.
better, you teach. You got to teach the right perspective. Like, I know I can't teach my son, how I grew up and how I picked a woman and chose, and all that other stuff. Because if I do that, I'm teaching him a worldly perspective, and he gonna go out there and get something from that area. Now I can tell him what I've learned, and I can teach him that.
So to your question, and I think it's a great question, I think one of the biggest concerns is that we got to realize that if I'm teaching my children through the lens of my ego, I'm still trying to be important. I'm still trying to look like I'm the man, you know what I'm saying, talking about my glory days in high school and things of that nature. No, I need to teach my children through the lens of the lessons learned and what I am currently learning right now. So I teach them through the lens of the mistakes that I made, being transparent, helping them to realize that, listen, I've done a lot of things wrong, right? But here's the thing I want you to understand. I want you to understand this. I need you to understand that, because I don't want you to go out here and make the exact same mistakes I made, right? Teach young men not to get married fresh out of high school. That's one of the biggest mistakes that we make. They're still struggling, trying to figure life out. So why would you go tie yourself to a young lady and then both of you struggle? And then, oh yeah, by the way, because y'all married now, and chances are, got to consummate the marriage, bro. And you know what happens after that? Baby. So now you got 3 people in the house and all of y'all are working, but we glorify ourselves for working. It's the most ridiculous thing that you've ever heard. So parents have to teach children through the lens of their mistakes to help them to understand, say, listen, don't do this, and here's why. Not so much as don't do this because I'm trying to control you. I'm trying to help you because I want your life to be 10 times better than what my life ever was.
I got it. So you are teaching, but you're teaching from the lens of the lessons learned, not
Correct.
necessarily, and give, of course, some experience, but not, to Roland's point, not, well, me and your mama got married at 17 and it worked for us. We had 10 kids back to back and it worked and we made it through. No, bro, y'all knew y'all shouldn't have been married at 17 having them kids. Y'all struggled. We ain't have but a handful of syrup for the first 10 years of our life. Right. There was bad juju. So, all right, I get it now.
Yeah, I can't talk to you about when gas was 25 cents a gallon. When you go down the street, gas is $4 a gallon right now. It's a two totally different eras.
Yeah.
We can't even have those same conversations. Teach them from the lens of the lessons learned over the years. Me telling you about me and your mama got married at the age of 16. We had 2 houses with 15 kids between the 2 houses. And I was the only person at work, and all she did is raise the kids. That's you teaching from your ego. Nobody cares.
Yeah, you got to teach the pitfalls and the victories.
And I think part of the disconnect as I'm listening to y'all talk is, even with parents teaching, because the reality is a lot of our homes don't have mommy and dad, right? One or. And so with that, you have a lot of parents teaching from their hurt perspective, a lot of people teaching from their ego. And then, but even with that, because we don't have family structures anymore, we no longer have an identity as a community. So we're not even teaching the same thing. So I'm not teaching my daughters to be compatible with Coach's son. So how can they in the community end up together? And then we wonder why that generation has broken homes and broken marriages. Because me and Uncle ain't teaching the same thing. We're teaching our perspective, our ego, and our pain. But that's why I went back. There has to be a foundation. What do we believe? What do we set our foundation on? What I'm teaching you based off of? Because it can't be my experience. Because my experience is individual, is unique. It's a one. It's a one man. Well, me and whoever I'm with, but it's a one man experience. Your experiences may not line up with mine. You may not take the same path we take. You know, so it has to be based off something.
Agree. Great question though. Okay, what's the next one? Moving on to the next question. And you, like I said, you guys keep them coming. Coming from the younger generation, most of us lack morals and respect for a relationship and look for something quick or to see if the grass is greener on the other side. Absolutely. A lot of people look to relationship as financial gain, which again kind of speaks to what we were talking about previously. Appreciate that, young brother, and always good to see you. Welcome. Okay, next. Why do men and women do not spend quality time together like before? Values. The value system is gone. The value system isn't centered on anything long term. The value system is all about quick fix. It's like trying to get that quick money. It's like being on the corner trying to get that quick money, right? Same thing when it comes down to relationship. You know, are we financially compatible? Can you help me pay my bills? Can you do this right here? You know what I'm saying? Can I file? Can I claim you on my income taxes? Like all those things are an issue. And that becomes the biggest problem whatsoever right there. We look at people through the lens of our needs and not necessarily looking at people through the lens of us being healthy. So we don't take the time to better ourselves. So we take our insecurities and pin it on somebody else and hold them responsible for my insecurities. So if I have low self-esteem, I am going to ask that person every day, do I look good? How do I look in this? How do I smell in this? So forth and so on. Go to the gym and start pumping all the iron and start walking around the house with no shirt on, as though she ain't never seen you with no shirt on before. But you're doing it because you want her to praise your body because you're praising your body. That's really what it all boils down to. The value system now today is going to the garbage.
And I add to that, we relationships are work. Like when you get into it, it's not when you first get together, it's oh, he's so cute. You like he passed gas. You like, oh boy, all that other stuff. But then when you get, into it where you got to actually put some work in, the work ain't cute. The work ain't fun. And we want that dopamine rush, like, oh, he got the abs and she got the badunk and all that other stuff. But then when that goes away, that dopamine rush leaves. Now you got to deal with the person and actually communicate and actually be together and actually put some sweat equity in. And that's the hard part. And instead of doing that, you rather start all over with a new dopamine rush.
And my biggest thing with what we just went to, right, when we talk about these expectations, here's the problem. So I don't think sometimes, and yeah, I'm talking to my women on this one, we don't understand how long it took Tyler Perry to write those lines, right? And I say this all the time, but don't come. A lot of women have expectations when you talk about those dopamines. They have these expectations for men to come in like these superhero men that Tyler Perry wrote in his movie. You looking at your favorite celebrities on their reality show. You basing what you need out of this relationship based upon what happened on TV. Don't ask your man that silly question. What do you do for me? He ain't got time to write a script like Tyler did, and so you might not like his answer. Right? So no, don't take that advice. No, you're taking advice from a man who spent more time who ain't married himself. So I'm just saying. So where are we going with these expectations? And so because I don't fit the mold of that man you saw on TV, of that Morris Chestnut movie, right? So you no longer want to be around me. I don't tickle your fancy no more, and vice versa.
I think my response is I think people don't know what it is. in one hand, and I think that they don't know that it is a requirement. I didn't know that spending quality time in my first relationship was a requirement. I knew something you're supposed to do, but actually going out and being intentional about spending time with that person in order for that relationship to last is essential. So if you never heard it here before, August the 16th, 2024, Empower Perspective Podcast, Hearts of Men. It is a requirement. It is a must to spend quality time with someone in order to have a successful relationship. And what it is what quality is and quality time is determined between what you and that person decide what it is. It may be something as simple as, hey, we sit on the couch and watch a movie together. That's quality time. For other people, it may be going to Ruth Chris and go and get some food. So that's my 2 cents.
Go to Chick-fil-A and get some food. Hey,
Or
so
Chick-fil-A.
I'm to be a petty man. So to your point, though, I'm glad y'all said that. The Bible says, husbands, get along with your wives according to knowledge, which means that he has to spend time with her to understand what she is like, so forth and so on. But there's also a hidden responsibility in that. Wives, you have to be more transparent with that man so he can understand who you are. So we have to look at what is directly said and what is also implied. And a lot of times what ends up happening, you have a failed relationship. And then, of course, and I've said this before, when relationships fail, men go to work, women go to church. But Pastor ain't going to tell you that you were just as guilty as he was. Pastor going to stroke your ego and make you feel good and make you feel good about all that great stuff simply because I know it's painful, I know it hurts, so forth and so on. He going to get his, come on up and pay them tithes. So we got to be completely honest and transparent about what we're doing. In most cases, we got to go all the way back and understand the root cause to the problem. What we like to do is talk about the problem that hurt the most. But generally, in most cases, just because it's the problem that hurts the most, that may not be the beginning of where the problem stems from. And if I only make you feel good because I'm pandering to how you feel and never get after the root cause, 9 times out of 10, you're going to take that root cause into your next situationship, and it becomes a repetitive thing until somebody just get to the point that they just accept it and create coping mechanisms around it. So that's the other part I want to add to it. Yeah, pay those sides. I ain't playing. Moving on to the next question. Listen, man, you guys are on it tonight. Again, wherever you are, make sure that you're hitting the like button. Make sure that you're sharing it, because as you can see, these brothers aren't pulling any punches tonight. Okay. This topic is all about the erosion of commitment and covenant. That's right. I said it. How has the shift from viewing marriage as a sacred covenant to seeing it as a social contract impacted the stability and longevity of relationships today?
I think marriage is no longer looked at as this sacred covenant because society has made it so easy to escape. It's like if you have a headache, just go take a pill. Or if you have a kid you don't want, go to Walgreens and get a plan B. It's like one of those things you can just escape, Calgon take me away thing. So now you leave the work portion and you don't want to work at it. So now you like, I just get a new one. And all you doing is you taking your trash to somebody else's doorstep because you didn't do the work to fix yourself. You haven't fixed the problem because you looked at someone else as the problem, never looking in the mirror and say, where am I at fault? How can I rectify these situations and make things better? Now, some relationships, you should not be in. You should go your separate ways. But if it's something that you are in and you're doing all your part, and don't think just because you think you're doing your part, you're doing your part, because you have to also listen and see what that other person is saying they need from you as well.
I think that how it's impacted the stability and longevity is because people look at them as being different. And so bear with me. So what I mean by that is I think that in my opinion, you need both of these. I think it's okay to just have a sacred covenant, but I think that is also a social contract as well. So that's just my opinion. And you can give me all the slack you want to, but that's just what I believe. And I think that's where the problem is because they look at them as two separate things. And I think if you look at them together, I think you can come up with a better product. Yes, it's a sacred covenant that we got together, under our Creator's eyes and blessed off on this marriage, right? It's great, but we also live in a natural world. We live in a social world. We socialize with people on our jobs, on podcasts, on social media all day long. So there is a contract or an agreement between those two people that determines how certain behaviors are going to be done with inside that covenant or with inside that marriage. So I think sometimes when we look at a social contract or we look at contract, we think that it's something negative. You know what I mean? But you think about here, everybody on this panel at some point signed a contract that led to many, many years of military service. It wasn't necessarily a bad thing, or if it was for you, then shame on you for signing it again and signing it again. So I think sometimes the word contract, or we look at social contract, it has a negative. People think negatively about it, but I think that part of the problem is they think they're separate, and you can't have one without the other. You can have. I think it's more so you can have both, and I think if you have both, they have a better stability and maybe even some more longevity in your relationship.
When I think of the shift from viewing marriage from a sacred covenant to seeing it as a social contract, the problem is, and I've been saying this all podcast really for this question, the problem is we've taken the foundation out. It's not a sacred covenant because, and here's the problem, is because we no longer truly believe. And I'll be trying to stay on topic, but we don't believe that we're under a sacred covenant with the Most High anymore. Anyway, literally, I promise you, if you and I hate when people say no, that's not what we believe. But when we get down to the nitty gritty of what we say we believe out of the scriptures, and I'm talking about our modern doctrines, we really believe that I have to have a sinful and a non-godly nature and behavior in order for Christ to be good. What? And so, and why am I bringing that up? Is because that's the way we approach everything, from that premise that there is no standard of living when it comes to the Most High, that we do whatever we want and then we just call Jesus and it's all better. Because we take one verse out of context when we say that he presented faultless before his majesty. Yeah, because he's going to watch what you did yesterday, change you inside so you can be different, right? The context is you're still under a sacred covenant with the Father himself. So therefore, the order that he has ordained as marriage is no longer important to us. This is how we can come out in time and have distorted what marriage is as a whole in today's society. It is not only, in some cases, it's not even a social contract. It's a monetary contract, and it's everything but a covenant. That's because we, as individuals, don't believe we have a covenant with the Father first. So therefore, there's nothing sacred about what we do in this vessel, and our marriages are viewed that way. This is why we can get up here and we can say, well, and I promise you, I know women that get mad if a man carries groceries in the house. You're not gonna make me weak. You're not making you weak. He's doing what he knows to do as a man. He's helping you carry a heavy load. He's going to wash your car, to fill up your car. He's going to fix something, Oh, coach said do the yard, but because we even taught our women that they're supposed to be stronger than their men. They're supposed to be louder than their men. They're more right because men don't start getting smart to their 50 and women mature at 10 years old. Like this is literally what we teach people. And so there's no trust from the woman to the man. How can he lead? She was raised to distrust him simply because he's a male, right? And so we can go on and on and on this, but for me, we have to get the foundation back because we view this thing as I don't even know what we view it as now, but it's not sacred under the Most High. So that's why we can distort everything else underneath.
Okay. I don't know. Maybe I missed what Roland. I guess I missed Roland. To me, this is easy. It's all about understanding the difference between a covenant and a contract. A contract is a mutual agreement of distrust. A covenant is a mutual agreement of trust, but it is a mutual agreement of trust between two people that you can't trust. So there's only one person that can stand in between them that you can trust. Therefore, going back to what those brothers were saying, if it's not rooted in the right thing, it automatically becomes a mutual agreement of distrust. We want to move according to what we see on TV, all kind of other stuff of that nature. So it's not that we focus on what the scriptures say. It's not that we focus on what the conversation that moves us in the direction of the expansion of understanding within the scope of the scriptures. We want to do the things that we see other people do. We want to do what what we like per se. So when it comes down to that understanding of covenant within the scope of it, sure, I have a responsibility, not to her, but to him. Only she becomes the beneficiary of it. Social contract, it gets down to the point where I get to manipulate you with how I feel. I feel like, and you don't get the right to tell me that how I feel. And that's both men and women now. I'm trying to be, you got to be trying. Listen, listen. I have never seen so many emotionally filled men in my life. I'm just being transparent. You can't just talk about emotion these days and point the finger at women. No, it's both men and women. So when we look at it from a large perspective, the social contract is all about how I feel. And it changes every time I change. You may be doing something I like today. Give us about 3 months. I don't like that no more. I change. Why didn't you change with me? So when we look at the instability of relationships, given the context of social contracts and covenant, no one really focuses on the covenant anymore. It's too hard. And that's my thoughts.
So my social contract response came from a different definition of what a social contract is from yours. Mine was when I was at the elementary school for the last 7 years. There was a program that came in and there was a social contract, right? And what the teachers did, they went over with the students, and the students said, we're going to do our social contract. These are going to be the rules that we are going to have in our classroom. And everybody who comes everybody will sign this contract. And everybody who comes inside of the classroom, to include myself, the counselor, or anybody else, to be part of this classroom family, you need to read and understand and sign this contract as well. So that's where my contract understanding was coming from. The social contract was coming from. It's just an agreement between these people as to how we're going to function. In this case, the scenario, the classroom, but in what I was talking about was in the marriage. Me and my wife had decided these are things that we are and not going to deal with inside our marriage. That was our social contract. So that's the perspective that I was coming from when I was giving my answer, which was a different definition of what Coach's definition of a social contract was. I just make the water more muddy.
No. You're good. But the reason why y'all signed that document is because whenever they get out of line, I get to pull that document out and say, hey, this is what you said. Covenant, you can't do that because the covenant is already written. So you know what the covenants say before you even get into it. When I pull this out in a social contract, a mutual agreement of distrust, you have now breached the contract. So there's only two things that we can do. We can amend this bad boy to go along with the changes if it benefits me, or we can go ahead and just cancel the whole contract. You don't get paid, bro.
Exactly. And that's why the social contract, it benefits the person that holds the contract. So, like if you're in school, if you go outside of that contract, you or a student, now we can sever the relationship and see if a relationship was meant to be severed, you wouldn't have a covenant. Because, like Coach said, you aren't the holder of said covenant agreement. It's not yours. You just agreeing that, hey, I'm abiding by what he says about us, and you're abiding by what he says about us. His word guides us. We don't guide ourselves. So with the social, hey, let's just tear this thing up right a new one. Let's be poly. I'll be all over the place.
Well. It looks like we have a celebrity coming to the stage tonight, gentlemen. Listen, y'all help us to welcome our brother Christopher McClellan from across the table with Christopher McClellan, also known as Still the Angry Guy. Chris, how are you, my friend?
I am well. How are y'all? I'll
What's good? What's
probably
good?
be freezing a little bit because I just turned my internet back on because I just got back in town. So bear with me.
Gotcha. And just for the sake of everybody, if you haven't figured it out yet, this is going to be definitely a part two. I think we got to what, two questions so far. Oh, we only did one question. Okay, I'm just saying. So yeah, that 2 questions. Okay, yeah, that's just saying. And again, don't let that deter you guys from asking questions in the chat because again, we value that as well. Do we have any other questions that we need to entertain in the chats before we move on? I think so. There we go. Do you gentlemen think if you all have a relationship with the creator only, he can inform you about his daughter whom he created, hence informing y'all if the two are equally yoked?
I'm gonna sit this one out because I don't even know what any of that stuff means. So yeah, I'm gonna sit this one out.
I'm trying to see the only part, the creator only. I'm gonna just take that part out. He can inform you about his daughter. I think that sounds good in theory, but when you're dealing with a person who has a history, who's lived a life, who she may not be his per se at this moment. So the equally yoked part, if you're equally yoked with someone, it doesn't mean that y'all agree on everything and y'all both going to church. Because when you're equally yoked, now your vision is the same. We see the same direction of travel. So when we have moments of arguments or whatever, we know how we're gonna come together to rectify the situation. It ain't gonna be, well, I'm cussing you out, I'm throwing your stuff over the balcony and all that other stuff. I think that he does give the scripture does guide me in how I should treat everybody, whether it be my sister or someone who's not.
I'm gonna say yes. All things are possible. I do think that if you do have the one part I don't understand is the word only, why that word was in there after creator. So I'm gonna respond to this as if that word wasn't there. I hope maybe it'll help or maybe it won't. And I apologize if it doesn't answer the question. Do you gentlemen think if you have a relationship with the creator, boom, he can inform you about his daughter whom he created. Absolutely. I do believe that God can share things with us about other people. And I do think that he can let me know if this is my woman and this is something that that the two of us are equally yoked. So I do think yes. On a short answer, I do think that yes, this is possible.
I was trying to read something real quick, and reading hasn't always been fundamental for me, so I don't read as fast as some of you older folks. But with that said, I just don't find any biblical, and this is how I operate, right? I may not quote scripture all the time, but uh, a lot of my responses are based upon something that I know the scripture addresses, but the scripture does not address anything that tells me that this is a thing. I do get when a man finds a wife, he finds a good thing, and then that's like the limit of him searching for
So
the
how
wife.
did he find her? How does he find this woman unless he's been shown something from somebody, his
Oh,
creator?
just wait. It's coming. I
It's
promise.
coming out. Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
So the problem is when we have this conversation, we have to understand that the scripture has operated, and at least in the evidence it's given us, in a different manner, because it never really mattered what the woman believed. It mattered what the father of the woman believed, because it was orchestrated from family to family, right? Or the man will go ask the father, and the father will give the daughter unto the man, regardless of what she believed. She was given to that man to follow, to love, to honor, and of course he was supposed to love her, respect her, right? Husband, love your wife as Christ love the church. You can't negate that, right? But when we looking at how this operated, it wasn't. He didn't have to look and see what her belief system was. He didn't have to look and see what God, because you remember when Isaac got got his uh got his wife, that whole scenario didn't go the way didn't go the way we thought it was going to go. I'm sorry, Jacob got his wife. It didn't go the way we thought it was going to go, because when they left her father's house, she stole her father's God. They didn't. He had a bunch of gods somewhere, but we know that Jacob served one God. So what you get what I'm saying? But she followed in with him. So there's a lot that comes from this conversation when we go that direction, because I don't have no scriptural evidence on it. So I'm trying to tread carefully without going too far left. So maybe you can help me, because I'm trying not to go completely over there with it, but we have to get the order back in place. We have to, if we get there, I think we won't really be arguing about some of the stuff we argue about in this conversation. But I'm gonna mute.
Do you guys remember Sunday morning on TikTok? I actually answered this question. Remember we talked about Proverbs 31? And Gad, I think one of the things you said is that most people think that is instructions to the woman, but really that was the king's mother giving him instructions on how to find a wife. And we like to conflate scriptures. When a husband finds a wife, he findeth a good thing and obtaineth favor from the Lord. And therefore, in our minds, what not in our minds, but a lot of times what you hear is that the favor comes because of the wife. Well, the favor comes because of the wife's ability to be Proverbs 31. And when he sees a Proverbs 31 woman, that is bride material, but may not necessarily be his bride. That's the key. So going back to the question, when we say the creator only, it is impossible for me to have a relationship with the creator only and not have a relationship with his people, because part of my relationship with the creator mandates that I have a relationship with his people. That's the only way that I can even see a Proverbs 31 woman. Secondly, the relationship that I have with his people actually shows me how I really view him, because in essence, I gain insight on my behavior through his people about my character. Therefore, it helps me to adjust my character so that I can be more obedient to him. Now, moving forward, we talked about Ephesians 5 and how Ephesians 5 breaks down in the instructions in Ephesians 5. And it talks about husbands, love your wives like Christ loved the church. So the man is supposed to study the life of Christ. Wives, submit yourself to your own husband. Then he goes on and talks about the church. And so when we look at the different things of study, not that any person omit anything, but also studying everything, it really makes sense. So wives, women, you study the scripture so that the scripture gives you the ability, it gives you clarity. The scriptures give you clarity. Men, you actually have to get to the point to where you not only understand that we have a unified purpose, but you understand your calling. When you understand your calling, now you understand the vision which is given to you from the Most High, and the calling becomes the selector of your bride. Every woman that is a Proverbs 31 woman cannot be my bride. So whatever I'm called to do, she is a helper to that thing. So when it comes down to, like we talked about in the beginning, the training that is supposed to take place in the house, we're supposed to help these young men to understand that you should not get a bride until you understand what you're called to do. Now, when you understand what you're called to do and the vision now bestowed upon you, that becomes the thing that selects your bride for you, because she is to help me.
And I hate when people throw stuff out there. When we're talking unequally yoked, people throw it out there, and it just bugs me. When you talk about unequally yoked, it's not. If you go to the scripture, it says unequally yoked with unbelievers. It doesn't say, yo, this is my partner. No, it's with unbelievers, and that means that the unbeliever is stronger in what they believe versus what you believe. Because when you're unequally yoked, it was so that the older ox could train the younger ox which way to go. It was so that he could be the guide. If you're unequally yoked, then that with the unbeliever, that means that they are the guide. They're guiding you away from what you believe. And in relationships, you have to be the guide, or you have to get with somebody who's strong in the faith if you're weaker in the faith. Because if we talk about a faith thing, if we're talking about the scripture is what's guiding you, you have to find someone whomever is stronger. You can't be unequally yoked with someone who's weaker than you or higher than you in unbelief.
Just in case nobody realized what it was one of my old preacher towels. I was acting like I was throwing it at Roland. That's what you do to the preacher when he preaching. Boy, you better, because that's all I'm gonna say. Roll, yes, sir.
I don't know. You kind of look like somebody creeping uncle when you peeped your head around the corner with smiling. I was like, what is going on right now? Oh man, let's grab one more tonight so we get our brother Chris in line here. Get him some mic time. I want to get Chris some mic time. So the next question, there we go. In what ways has the modern emphasis on personal happiness and fulfillment weakened the traditional concept of commitment in relationships?
Everybody has become selfish. Everybody has become selfish, and we know better. We're not this stupid. We know better. And that's the part. I think that's honestly why I'm always angry, because we are doing this nonsense and we know better. We're not this dumb. I'm sorry. We're not this dumb. We're not this dumb. And a lot of us don't understand the concept of a relationship and about it being two people and not about what you can get out of somebody. That's just, listen, man, everybody needs to take a shower. Everybody needs to take a shower. Because everybody is talking about how toxic everything is, but you can't really talk about how toxic everything is when you're in what's toxic too. Go take a shower. Go hit the showers. Hit the showers and then clean your room. Get your mind right. That's really what I believe. Everybody needs to take a shower.
Yeah, I get that. I think the mindset has kind of shift from, like Chris said, but from we to me, whereas at some point it was about us. It was about all of us. And then I don't know what happened, but maybe this modern thing is, I get focusing on yourself, but not to the detriment of the relationship. There are certain things that I have to focus on, when it comes to myself for my relationship. Like I have to focus on a certain level of fitness so I can be around here, for my wife, for my kids, for my grandkids, different things like that. So I think that's different than just only focusing on that and forgetting about the relationship. So I think, like Chris said, I think a lot of times we've, in pretty much what has happened is it went from a we concept to now everything is focused on yourself. Like Chris said, selfishness.
I think the focus on me thing has caused me to lack in the relationship. Oh, what do I mean? When we focus on if I'm focused on me and what I want, what I can get, how I feel, what I think, what I believe, I forget. Yes, the relationship is the most important part, but it doesn't. I think it's easy to say things and miss the fact that the other person is also important. Just like you feel as that you're important. And so when I focus on me, I deprive the other person of what they need from me. Not want from me, but what they need from me. Which puts them in a position to where they have to back themselves into self-preservation mode. Which means now they can't give me what I'm trying to get or what I need or whatever it is that I think I should get. I can't get it because the other person is in self-preservation mode because they have poured everything into this relationship and I left them high and dry. Right? We don't look at it like that, right? But or even if the other person didn't, if the other person's doing the same thing I'm doing, trying to get the me out of it, then we both are depriving each other, which causing both of us to focus on me, which means still you don't get what you need from me and I don't get what I need from you in this relationship. So the relationship gets neglected and everything else just falls into pieces.
I think when we focus on happiness, Coach always says words have meaning, and this word happiness does have a meaning. Happiness comes from an Old Norse word, hap, which means fortune, which means luck. It means chance, fate, something and then they put the en as a suffix to make it into a verb, and then they added the y to say it's full of. So when you're looking at happiness, it's all about your good fortune and things that happen good for you and to you and through you, instead of you saying, okay, life ain't about you being happy. It's not about your happiness, because no one's going to always be on the roller coaster at the highest peak. Sometimes it's going to be at a low level. You're going to be in the valley at times. So you can't deal with relationships as if everything is always high. That's not your fate. That's not your luck. That's not the chance you were given. You're going to have some ups, you're going to have some downs, and you have to be able to navigate through them all without falling apart, without going crazy because things aren't happening to go your way.
All of that sounds great, but I'm still going to go back to my original statement. We know better. We know we're not supposed to be treating each other like this. We can make up all of the excuses and go back as far in the history as you want to. And it's good to have that knowledge and it's good to have that research. But at the end of the day, at a gut level, we know better. Like we do. We're not this dumb. And perception of relationships is I think the perception of relationships is really why don't nobody want to get in one, because of how it's viewed. But when I look outside my door, I see relationships forming all the time. So maybe if somebody found a way to change the perception of what a relationship is, and that got pushed to the forefront, we'd probably have more committed relationships. Right now, everybody is seeing relationships being destroyed and it being big news. And to keep it real, they always do it around the time that the country has to make a really, really big decision about what's going to happen going forward. Like, we're not this dumb. Like, we're not. I'm sorry. We know this. So that's where I'm at with it. So when we have conversations about relationships, my base level, you know better. You know you're not supposed to be doing this. You know better.
I really want to believe that. I don't think we know better though. You know
Yes,
what I'm
you
saying?
do, man. Yes, you do.
No,
At a
no,
gut
no,
level,
hear me out,
yes,
hear,
you
hear-
do.
hear me out, hear me out, hear me out, hear me out. A person, the evidence of knowledge is behavior. If it does not manifest itself in the form of behavior, it is just information. What I believe is that we live in a society right now is thirsting for information, but never allow that information to transpose itself into knowledge. So we'll regurgitate a lot of great things, but we never get to the point to where we get to emotionalize it and express it because we don't know it. But we can quote, this person over here and quote that person over here and quote this person over here. And it sounds really good. But at the end of the day, when we look at our life is supposed to be the evidence of what we know. That's why it is broken down in the 3 points: knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. And so to go into the space of knowledge, there has to be a level of understanding of the information that we get. And then in the space of knowledge, the consistent practice of that thing gets us to the point of wisdom, which should be the well in which we teach from. So just in this particular conversation about happiness, is not happiness an emotion? And so the quest for happiness is in essence the quest for emotional fulfillment, which means that, like I tend to say all the time, and I really do believe it, that my emotions will rise at the level of my ego. Therefore, in order for me to be happy, it is a mandate that from time to time I must use you if we're in relationship. Because it's going to come to the point where I'm going to, like the prophetess Janet Jackson said, what have you done for me lately? It is a mandate. And everything that we hear has us to focus on this guy: self-love, self-care, Why can't it just be that without the word self in front of it? Is not love the same thing without the word self? Is not care the same thing without the word self? It is a conditioning that has happened from years on top of years that got us to the point to where the thing that we're doing is actually what we know. So in essence, I'm understanding what you're saying, and I really want to agree with you. But there's way too much evidence that I'm seeing right now to this day to where I can even say I don't even believe that people really want to be in relationship with each other. They want to be around the people that can get them what they want because they're focused on self. The scriptures say, even when I hear people say, this is what I need from you, nothing. You don't need nothing from me. The scripture says, delight thyself in the Lord. So I think the issue becomes is that we become conditioned to using each other for our own personal gratification, as opposed to taking the time to seeing how can I serve you? How can I help you? How can I do this for you? So forth and so on. Go ahead, man.
But see, we've heard this before. We have. The perception of relationships is trash, but the fact that we need relationships in order for us to grow is also knowledge that we know this. It's everywhere. You can't not know this. That's why I'm saying we know better. Like, we know better because it's there. You know what you I'm sorry, man. Maybe this is just me thinking about it too deep because I've been on a journey. And I'm really like getting in tune with myself, and I'm starting to actually understand how my body feels at certain times. And my body changes when I know I'm doing something I'm not supposed to be doing. Like, I know better. You understand what I'm saying? That's the part that I'm fighting with. Like, I'm fighting with that. The fact that you could ignore that feeling in the back of your brain saying you know better and do it anyway. I'm fighting with that. I'm fighting with that. We know better, man. We know better.
But I'm agreeing with you. That's how it should be. But if I have been conditioned for so long of a thing, then I think that thing is right. Like you said, you've been on the journey, right? There's a lot of people who
I
need
took
to
a
go on
shower.
the journey. Yeah, exactly.
I took a
There's a
shower.
lot of people who still need to go on the journey, and they're giving themselves far too much credit for being a thing that they're not. You had to recognize something within yourself and say, hey, you know what? This is what I want for me. And in order for us to be healthy for a relationship, which again, going back to the beginning, that's not something that's taught. We're not taught that we need to be healthy for a relationship. And here's the other part to it. We are, what I like to say, we are conditioned for trauma. Everything that we experience, especially in this community right here, right? The Black community, everything that we see is trauma. Everything. You can't go 6 months without seeing trauma happening in our own community. And then lo and behold, don't watch CNN, don't watch Fox News, don't watch the news at all. And it's gotten
I
so
made
bad.
that mistake last week. OMG.
Right.
Like, come on. Like, I'm sorry,
Yes.
man.
No, you're good.
I'm still fighting. I'm still fighting with that because we're not, we know better. We are
Yes.
not supposed to be. And what's crazy is listen. This is something that I really want to share. We are not supposed to be as afraid of each other as we are. We
No.
really are not. We're not supposed to be as scared of each other as we are. That's why I'm saying, like, we know better, man. We know better. We know better.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't use anybody else for my happy. The Bible tells me where to get happy from. So when I ignore that and I now make you responsible for my happy now, and you accept it, now I get to manipulate you for the entire time that we're in a relationship. All I got to do is do it through the lens of my emotions. Roland, I don't know if you froze or what, bro. Oh, okay, there you go. Any other thoughts before we
I'm
make
sorry.
this-
I didn't mean to
You
rant.
good.
I'm sorry.
You good, bro. We miss your rants. And we haven't heard our favorite word tonight either, but that's all right.
Everything that I talked about is getting rid of the ego. Everything. Everything that I talked about is getting rid of the ego because we know better. I'm sorry, man. We cannot brag about how educated we are and be this dumb. We know better. We know better, man. We know better. We cannot talk about all of our accolades and all of the stuff that we doing outside of us and hold that in high regard and patronize you like you this stupid. I'm sorry. We're not this dumb. I have way too much faith in my people and think that we are this stupid because we're not. We're not this dumb. We know better. Matter of fact, that's my final thought. We are not this stupid and we know better.
Well, there it is. The perfect segue into the final thoughts for this evening.
I guess my final thought is this, man. Why modern day relationships are doomed? I wouldn't say that they're doomed because, like I said, when I look outside, I see a bunch of relationships forming. Hell, I'm forming relationships now in this journey that I'm going on. Relationships aren't dead. It's just the perception. The perception of relationships is trash because all we see is relationships crumbling and a villain coming out of it. That's all we see. It's a perception thing. It really is. But even though it's a perception thing, I'm still going to go back to what I said, man. We can't brag about how smart we are and how we're doing all these big things and be this stupid with what matters, which is us. We can't be this dumb. We can't, man. And we know better. We do. We know better. That's my final thought.
Why modern day relationships are doomed, I'll kind of go back to my original talking point when I talked about distractions and confusion. A lot of people are not really sure what a good relationship looks like, what a regular relationship looks like. They're being blasted by a bunch of different information from a bunch of different sources, and everybody's coming to relationships with their own perception of what a relationship is. Like Chris said, I do believe that there are a lot of great relationships out there, and that not every single relationship going forward is doomed, not even the modern ones. I think the good thing about the modern relationship is that it doesn't necessarily look exactly like the traditional relationship. And I think that if you put proper principles and proper foundation in a modern relationship, I think that it can work. You know, there are a lot of people who have relationships that are not necessarily tradition and they work. There are relationships and people have relationships that they don't have any spirituality in their relationship and they still work. So relationships are very big. It's a huge topic. I hope and look forward to us having more about this conversation next week. And that is my final thought.
I hope that the modern day relationships are doomed. And when I say that, I don't mean just everybody's relationship. What I mean is that, to me, that the modern relationship is one that focuses on what I can gain, what I can get, my happiness. And if I don't get it, I'm out. And I think that that part of it needs to be doomed. And we need to go back to where I work on me and I get better for myself for the union. And I also have a guide that leads me. And I'm not so eager to dissipate the relationship or get rid of you when you're working on yourself, because I know that we're both doing the work. And if we're actually doing the work, our relationship will work when we come together, because we put the work in and we want to make sure that the relationship actually works, not just for my gain or her gain, but for our gain, so that we can make him look good.
I think the answer to this question has been answered in direct and indirect ways in this conversation. And for me, it's primarily one because the modern relationship doesn't have the most high in it. The modern relationship is about the carnal concept, the physical concept, the emotional concept, the financial concepts, and none about the journey of the spirit man with the most high. And with that being said, once we get into this physical or this worldly concept, the only place to then run to is my flesh, right? Flesh is the reason why I chose who I chose, which means which is the reason why flesh is the direction I take in every decision that I make concerning this relationship. I think there's a way of moving forward, right? And so with that, I do agree with my brother. That's why it is doom. I hope it is doomed, so that we can get back to relationships that have a hint of who the Most High is through it and in it, and through it, other generations can see it and be blessed. I don't think this style of relationship can transform to the next generation. Uh, but where we get better at, I think, is individual work before we get into relationships, right? The road, I think, is harder if you are in relationships trying to fix relationships or trying to fix how you do relationships. But if you aren't, I think one of the first things we need to do is self-evaluations of who we are. Excuse me. Of who we are. Do I have anything to to give to this relationship? When I look in the mirror, can I see myself pouring into someone in this relationship, or is my focus on going into this relationship what I can gain, what I can receive, how I can be benefited, what piece of the chicken I'm gonna get, right? I had to bring that back. And if that's how I view relationships, then I can't go into one because I have nothing to pour out. I only can drain from the other person. And then in doing so, you destroy that other person mentally, physically, emotionally. You have to be able to pour into this relationship. So yes, everybody has something to bring to their table, and I'm gonna say that. So we have to get there. And if you don't see that you have anything, then you have to be poured into. You have to be healed. You have to be mentored. You have to be taught so that something can be put into you. Your relationship with the Most High has to exist so that you have something in you that you can pour into that relationship, and then everyone involved can grow as a unit. That's all I have.
Hey, look, I'm going to reserve my final thoughts for next week because, as you've already heard, there's going to be a part 2 to this conversation. So, that being said, I want to thank each and everybody who has joined us. Whether you're on TikTok, I'm not TikTok, whether you're on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, whether you're on X, it doesn't matter. We appreciate you. We value you. Go ahead and get your free download. Just click on the link. It'll take you to a website to where you just scroll down and you'll find where you get a free, it's a free self-reflection that you can do as it pertains to relationships. Like you're hearing here. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in our community, and that work starts with each and every person looking in the mirror and stop pointing fingers at anybody else. So that being said, community, don't forget tomorrow morning at 10:30. Make sure that you click on the link so that we can participate in our community meeting tomorrow morning at 10:30. As you can see in the chat, thank you, Crystal. TikTok Sunday morning at 11:30. Hosted by my brother to my other side over here, Mr. Rolling Down the Street. As always, we look forward to those conversations. Tuesday, 7 o'clock, Coach's Corner. I think I got them all out for the week. Listen, man, you guys are awesome. You guys are amazing, whether you're on the panel, whether you're in the chats, whether you're just watching from afar and didn't want to say anything because you were just listening and learning. We appreciate you. We value you. Same time next week, right here, 8 p.m., the Hearts of Men podcast. Let the best version of yourself be a blessing to somebody else.